Welcome, today's story is full of drama. Like and subscribe to stay updated. Let's get started.
I glanced at the wall clock. She still wasn't home, and it was 10 till midnight. I'd gotten back an hour earlier after being left stranded at her company's event. She worked as an agent for Evergreen Home Interiors and Furnishings, handling sales with department stores. At some point during the party, while I was in the bathroom, she had simply disappeared, leaving with some guy without a word. My wife, Sophia Carter, and her latest stunt were pushing the limits of what I was willing to tolerate. Calling me angry would be an understatement. Then, finally, I heard the garage door open. A minute later, as expected, the back screen door slammed shut. No effort to be quiet. No concern for whether I was asleep. That only made my frustration burn hotter. "Oh, you're still up," she said, stopping short when she spotted me sitting at the kitchen table. "Yeah, well, if I had been sleeping, your grand entrance would have fixed that," I said. "I did kind of slam the door, didn't I?" she said. "Yes, you did." Again, I replied. "Didn't mean to. Sorry." "Got anything else to say to me?" I asked. "Like what?" she said. My stare made her shift uncomfortably. She knew exactly what I meant. Maybe she had hoped I was too tired for this conversation. She was wrong. "Brandon Hayes," she finally said. "An old friend. He was invited by one of the executives who knew him from somewhere. He asked if I wanted to see his new place. You and I have talked about moving, so I thought it would be helpful to check it out. It was just around the corner from the party. We didn't do anything, Daniel, but I guess time got away from us. When I realized it was after 11, I left as soon as I could." I let her words sit between us for a moment. "He asked you to see his new place, not something else?" She frowned. "Seriously? And how did you get home?" "Because it sure as hell wasn't with me," I said. "Brandon gave me a ride. He feels bad for making me late too," she said. I nodded. "All right, here's what's happening. I'm sleeping in the master bedroom tonight so I can get an early start packing. You can take the guest room just for tonight. Tomorrow, when I'm gone, you can have the room back. I won't disturb you in the morning. It's Friday. Sleep in." She shot me an incredulous look. "What are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about," I said. "I'm done, Sophia. I'm leaving and I'm divorcing you." He crossed the line. "You let him. And now you're standing here acting like I'm supposed to just move past it. That's not happening." "Daniel, you're overreacting," she said. "I swear, nothing happened." I just stared at her. She sighed, frustrated. "We can talk in the morning," I finally said. Without another word, she spun on her heel and walked off, clearly furious. That was just too damn bad. The coffee smelled good. Well, the coffee was always good, but the day figured not to be. She was sitting at the table stirring her morning candied coffee. I got a cup of the black elixir, I'm tough, I drink it straight, and sat down opposite her. "Okay, I guess it's time to talk," she said. "Yeah, it is," I said. "What did you think you were doing, hanging me out to dry at your company party, Sophia? A party where I knew virtually nobody and had absolutely nothing in common with any of them. Do I mean so little to you that you can do that to me without a second thought? Oh, and before you answer, there's no way I believe that you went to his new place to check it out. Maybe the bed or the couch, but the house per se? Not a chance." She sighed, putting her spoon down, her fingers fidgeting against the side of her cup. "Okay, first off, you're my husband, but you are not my only love interest," she said. "No, that's not quite right. You are my only love interest, but not my only lust interest." Shed stunned me. I think my mouth was twitching, kind of like a goldfish's. She smirked. "What the hell?" I said. "In the last hour or so this morning, I made the decision to tell you the complete and utterly unadorned truth. Some of it may piss you off pretty good, maybe even hurt you some, your ego. But that said, some may make you feel better," she said. "Really?" I said. "Sounds like a lot more bad than good." She shrugged. "Perhaps," she said. "Brandon is an old friend. Not just somebody who happened to get invited to the party. Like I said, I'll be packing. You have a nice life, you hear?" I said. She sighed, ignored me, and continued her spiel. For the life of me, I continued to sit and listen to her tripe. His company, Hayes Software Incorporated, is based downtown. We have lunch occasionally. I invited him. He's a fun guy. He has screwed me in the past, but that was before I met you. That said, he didn't screw me last night, as you discovered. Sometime in the future, I may let him do me again. He's part of the lust interest that I alluded to a minute ago. But again, we didn't do it last night, and it may never happen. And why would you wait? Dear soon-to-be ex-wife. I sneered. She smirked again. Her level of confidence was truly remarkable. I mean, if you were so overcome with lust for him, and maybe others, another smirk. Why? Well, because Brandon is bi. And a bit more bi than hetero, if you get my drift. So, like I say, it may never happen, him doing me anyway. He is very well-equipped and sensitive to a partner's needs. Frankly, Daniel, you could learn a thing or two from him, she said. And I am not your soon-to-be ex-wife. I love only you, and the idea of a divorce is not even to be entertained. I ignored her opinion as to the likelihood of a divorce. You sure know how to hurt a guy, I said. 12 years we've been man and wife, and all of this time, not one word from you about my, what? Inadequacies? Been cheating on me right along, have you, Sophia? No. In truth, there were a couple of times. But right along, as you put it? No, she said. I could feel my face darken, cloud over. Like I said, I'll be sleeping in the master tonight. You can have it back tomorrow, I said. Why? You never sinned, she said. You and Rebecca Sullivan, for example. She had me there. She'd caught me with Rebecca's underpants actually in my hands during a party while we were engaged. Rebecca and I had never done it, hadn't gotten that far, but we would have. At any rate, Sophia had caught us. So she and I had broken up, later made up, and finally put it behind us. Okay, point for you. But that was, in point of fact, before we were married. And no, I have not sinned since, I said. She knew ID had chances, and truth told, ID come close a few times, but I had never acted on any of them since we'd said our I do's. Who did you do it with? I mean, those couple of times, I said. One-night stands. In bars. You were out of town both times. I don't remember the names. The bars. It was just sex. A roll in the hay and goodbye, she said. The last time was 6 years ago, and the time before that 4 years ago. And I'm supposed to believe that? I said. Yes, she said. You still haven't answered my question, I said. About last night? Yes, I said. Don't know, really. It was spur of the moment. Figured we'd be back in an hour. Tops. But like I said before, time just got away from us, she said. You know what frosts me the most? Not that you left with him. Not that you cheated on me those 2 times. Those are bad enough. But what really frosts me is that last night, you didn't give a damn about me at all. I'm beginning to believe that you never really have, I said. Daniel, nothing could be farther from the truth. Yes, I was inconsiderate. Yes, I did kind of abandon you last night. And I'm sorry. Okay? She said. I nodded slowly, wondering just where we were at now. Did I feel any better than I had before we talked? The answer to that was an unequivocal no. You say you care about me, but I'm not sure I can believe you. I have to get away from you, at least for the time being, try to figure things out. I'll give you a call in a few days and we can talk. If you want to. If not, it'll be Splitville for the both of us. I mean, all of the above being whatever it is. And you still have the coons to say that sometime in the future you may let this Brandon a-hole screw you. Do that and we're done, no matter what else happens. I mean, you actually daring to say something like that to me is a slap in the face that may have us headed for divorce court anyway. But like I say, I aim to do some thinking. You might want to be putting your thinking cap on too. I mean, if you really do care about us staying together. Your arrogance, Sophia, is what's way over the top here. Not my checking out your panties. Look, Daniel, but I was already up and headed for the stairs. The Neon Lights Club was not fancy, a bed, a couple of chairs, a bathroom, and a closet. But for the moment, it got me away from her, and it had the added benefit of being close to work. I'm an accountant for Hamilton and Brooks Limited. I handle high-end clients with a penchant for wanting their income sheltered, even if it has to be offshore. Income, $300,000. Perks, very good. Life had been good to me except for a too pretty wife who really didn't care very much how she did me. And these, her latest exploits in that regard, were merely the proverbial last straw. Too much. Now, things were going to change and change fast, or it would be an end to us. And oh, about the high cost of divorce? It wouldn't be high for me. I didn't know how to dodge that bullet, I was damn sure of it. Hell, it's what I did for a living. And my wife, Sophia Carter? She damn well knew it. But this last stunt? I guess she figured her undeniably sensational body, looks, and bedroom skills made her Teflon when it came to how men dared to behave toward her. She looked over at her husband of 15 years and didn't bat an eyelash. So, did you get any new business for your trouble last night? Said Monica Hayes, age 46, still pretty, and clearly a female to be reckoned with. She was alluding to the party her husband had gone to the previous night, ostensibly to garner new business for his gyms and health clubs. Some leads is all. Mainly an opportunity to meet potentials, he said. Improved health and fitness is something that most people don't think about until their bodies have already gone to pot and the road back is discouragingly steep. She nodded. I hear the state senator was there. Did you get a chance to talk to him? She said. Yes, he was there. Just got introduced is all. No lengthy conversation. Seemed like everybody wanted a piece of him, he said. She noticed a slight but definite hesitation when she'd asked her last question. Something was going on. Brandon Hayes was good at some things but not worth a damn at playing poker. The question then became, why would her husband be skittish about answering a question relating to a high-profile politician? She'd be keeping an eye on him. Her husband, she suspected that he was playing with boys. And if he was the state senator one of his playmates? The man was married to a truly beautiful ex-model. Was she just arm candy? A political expediency? Monica Hayes doubted it. But stranger things had happened. He put down his drink and came to her. Let's get physical, he said. She smiled. You want to put that great big thingy of yours inside of me? She said, now giggling. Guilty, he said. He placed his hand on her side, feeling the fabric of her dress beneath his fingers. His wife was a striking woman. Every bit as captivating as Sophia Carter, his second favorite. The thought made him smile. He'd have to visit Sophia soon. She was, after all, someone who followed his lead. Life had been good to Brandon Hayes. All he had to do to keep it that way was be super discreet. Yes, discreet was the word. He let his hand rest lower, his grip firm but controlled. God, you are for sure one hot mama, he said. Well, if so, what are you waiting for, big boy? Take me. Do me, she said. He did. Sophia is a part-time interior decorator for Evergreen Home Interiors. She's sort of self-employed. She works out of our house as a decorator and sales agent for them. She gets most of her business by word of mouth from past customers, though she does also get leads from the home company. That said, her business was more of a hobby than anything else. She makes a tenth of what I do. This, no doubt, her reason for assuring me of her love and devotion and my importance to her entire existence. I was no fool. I hadn't seen any evidence of it before. But I had to believe that she'd been cheating on me more than she'd admitted to. She was just real good at keeping it hidden. But as for that, the Jonathan Fields agency would soon have the evidence. Any evidence of her past and present Purdy, if there indeed was any. That quite apart from her already alluded to admissions. And if so, if there was any evidence? She was dead meat. I was sitting at my desk, having just hung up the phone when my secretary buzzed me. Rachel, I said. Mr. Carter, Mr. Fields is here to see you, said Rachel. Said he had an appointment. Rachel was under strict orders never to allow anyone access to me without an appointment, which explained her hesitation in recognizing the importance of Mr. Jonathan Fields, my newly hired private investigator and an old friend from college. Jonathan and I had been close for years. I rarely called on his services, but when I did, it was usually to help a client deal with difficult divorce situations. We had a long history. It had been a month since I'd last reached out to him. The same length of time since I'd been home. Strangely enough, Sophia hadn't tried to contact me during that time either. She didn't care, or she was giving me space to cool off. Then again, I hadn't reached out to her either. Send him in, Rachel. I forgot to tell you about him. I was expecting him, I said. I met him at the door to my office as Rachel flagged him in. He was smiling. I take it from your smile that you have news, I said. Oh, indeed I do, said Jonathan Fields. I smiled. Go on. Yes. Well, let me begin with the bottom line, or lines, if you prefer. Your wife is a hooker. Brandon Hayes is her pimp. And she? They have been at it for some 6 years. I should add. He isn't screwing her, at least not recently, as far as I can tell. And believe it or not, he appears to be happily married. Is he bi? Do you know? I said. Yes. And while I haven't been able to confirm it for certain, I don't think his wife, Monica Hayes, knows about his other dealings or the business he and your wife are involved in. The Hayes own 3 beauty salons and 4 gyms. He manages the gyms. His wife runs the salons. They've got money. You know, Daniel, most of the time when I gather evidence on a spouse, I feel bad about it. Hate to see marriages fall apart. But in this case, your wife and her partner in crime are so far out of line that I have to warn you. Get your affairs in order and get the hell out of Dodge. Fast. Hooker. Pimp. 6 years worth, I said. Yes. I have them on tape. And video both. I also have the statements on tape from some of her liaisons. The cops are going to have a field day if you decide to out them. My guys talked to at least a dozen of her current and former clients who are willing to testify if we keep their wives, bosses, and significant others out of the loop, Jonathan Fields said. I could have gotten more, but it would be more than superfluous to have bothered. But how? I said. You're kidding, right? I can find out anything, Daniel. The world's an open book, really. Bartenders. Beauty salon workers. Braggarts at the gyms. It was a piece of cake. They're dead meat, Daniel. How dead will be your choice, he said. Sweet Jesus, I said. My bud took on a look maybe tentative. Jonathan, I said, reacting to his look. A friend of yours is one of her playmates, Daniel, he said. A friend of mine? Yeah. You do his taxes like you do mine, he said. He paused. I waited. Richard Davison, he said. He'd stunned me. The state senator? Boy, I said. Yeah. At least that, he said. Okay. Ducks in a row. Got it, I said. Anything else? Only these. The evidence. He pushed 2 large manila envelopes across the desk to me. Would I take a look at the pictures? Watch the videos? I wasn't sure. But probably not. I trusted Jonathan's judgment. So I figured it wasn't necessary. We talked a little longer. Then he was gone. Now I had to get moving. And get things done. Before she realized that I was on to her. Meanwhile, Sophia Carter sat across the table from Brandon Hayes, slowly shaking her head. No, Brandon. For the final time, no, she said. Look, with just a modicum of care and a minimum of effort, we could be rich. And that in no time, he said. I don't like it, she said. Selling my body for a few bucks to get my rocks off is one thing, but narcotics? Getting in bed with those gangsters? Not good, she said. We make, what? On the side from the sex thing? He said. Maybe $20,000 or $30,000 a year total. And we split that. Yes, I guess, she said. We could net 10 times that much rocking with the Vasquez brothers, he said. They have the product. We have the customers. Customers that owe us if we get right down to it. Look, Sophia, the salons and the gyms actually belong to Monica. Her inheritance funded the damn things. It's scary what could happen if she ever discovers our little side business. At least with the brothers, we would be able to ride our own ticket. And what happens when the Vasquez brothers decide they don't need us anymore? Then what? She said. We just make damn sure that they do continue to need us, he said. If we actually did this stupid thing, what would be my role? She said. I already have a husband, who I can only hope is crying nightly in his beer, trying to get over his snit. But as to that, I'm beginning to doubt he ever will. It's been more than a month now, and he hasn't returned. Called. Sent along a postcard. Nothing, she said. Her friend smiled. Lucky for us, said Brandon. It's given us time to set this other in motion. But to answer your question, you'd be helping me convince our more convincible clients that we could deliver to them that which they are probably already getting from some other supplier. I don't know. It's not something I feel good about, she said. Plus, I actually love my husband. He's a little too square for the real world. But he is trustworthy and loving. I need what he has to offer, she said. Brandon, well, apart from his nothing bedroom skills, risking this thing with the brothers? I mean, you've got Monica. And your occasional lists. Just out of curiosity, who's at the top of your list now, Brandon? Someone new? At least in prison, you'd have plenty of options to choose from. Me? Let's just say I wouldn't be too keen on the confined world of the state penitentiary. Whatever, said Brandon, snickering. We wouldn't be handling the product. We would just be pointing likely well-heeled clients in the right direction. And stepping back. And letting Miguel and Luis Vasquez and their ilk do the rest. Like I said, we'd never be getting our hands dirty. She nodded. But it was a definitely qualified nod. But, Sophia, on another topic. How are you thinking of handling your URW hubby? I mean, he has been out there amongst them for a while now. Frankly, that's just a little bit scary. We do not need him poking his nose into our enterprises. And what happens if and when he does come home? Will it be open arms for him? Or something less? Said Brandon. You got to be thinking about that. I mean, how to keep him calm, cool, and collected. Don't know just yet. But I suppose I do have to be thinking about it, she said. I'll be nice to him. But I figure I'll wait for him to make the first move. Sexually, he has to learn his place. But at any rate, that's between him and me, she said. He nodded. Okay, but don't turn him off. Or worse, run him off. We need him to not be an vengeful snit down the line, he said. He does have resources, as you and I have discussed. Should he decide to employ them? It could usher in a very bad day for us. I understand. And no, I do not want him in the know. Or getting in the way either. Those things are absolutes, she said. I'll have to figure something out. And I swear, she jumped 2 feet into the air when she saw me. I was leaning against the doorjamb leading from the kitchen, watching her balance her checkbook at the dinette table. At least, that's what it looked like she was doing. Daniel. Jesus, you scared the snot out of me. She said. Sorry about that, I said, not elaborating. After the fact, she looked rattled, caught off guard. I am so glad you're home. My God, I am, she said. She had risen from her seat and come to me, tendering me a hug and a sweet, if more or less perfunctory, kiss on the lips. Welcome home, my man, she said. Really? I said. You really missed me? Of course, she said. And yet I haven't heard word one from you since the day I left, I said. I know, she said. I knew you were angry, and I also knew you wouldn't be answering any calls from me in the near term. I was giving you time to come to, well, a more understanding state of mind, she said. I should say I was just about to the point where I was going to be tracking you down, she added. And never doubt it, I did miss you. I missed you a lot. I nodded toward her still open checkbook. Doing a little balancing? I said. She nodded. Yes. I was afraid I was going to have to tap into the savings for the rent this month. The checking account, well, since you left. My turn to nod. So, which is it? I said. Huh? She said. Which was it that you were missing the most? Me or my income? I said. Truth? She said. Both. They'll put some cash in the account tomorrow, I said. Wouldn't want our credit suffering now, would we? I wondered what she was doing with the money from her little side business. Figured she probably didn't want to be mixing the funds. I wouldn't were I her, I thought. How's that boyfriend of yours? I said. She took on a disgusted expression. I suppose you are referring to Brandon, she said. Not a boyfriend, Daniel. Just a friend. He's fine. And yes, I have talked to him some since you cut out on me. Lunches. And one dinner. Now, can we leave the subject of Brandon the heck alone and get to solving our problem? Really, she said. A little too forcefully. I looked at my watch. Let's go out to dinner, Sophia. Unless you've got a date with Brandon, I said. She seemed to be about to go off on me, but restrained herself. I snickered. ID struck a nerve. Well, okay. I did plan to go to dinner with him tonight, but I will call and cancel. You're more important, okay? She said. What? You'd cancel a date with such a good lover? I said. I told you he's not straight. We were not going to be doing anything you disapprove of, she said. No. You told me he was bi. Hell of a difference, I said. But yes. Do call and cancel. Well, I mean, it is my first night back. Surprise or not. She nodded. She went for her purse on the credenza and pulled out her cell. She dialed. Waited. And was apparently answered. Hi, yeah. It's me. Got to cancel. My hubby just got back. Yeah. Me too. Thanks for understanding, she said. It was easy to figure out that it wasn't Brandon on the phone. More likely one of her dates. She had not used his name. And the description of my return was a little too generic for it to have been someone in the know of our marital problems. Which I was more than certain good old Brandon was. There. Satisfied? She said. A better question might be, are you satisfied? I said. She ignored me. I have to freshen up. But we can go in maybe half an hour. Would that be all right? Yes. Sure, I said. Meanwhile, Anita's side of the story, Monica Hayes, was watching them closely. The woman had a striking, but noticeably younger, companion, who smiled nervously as they talked and sipped their drinks. She was dressed stylishly, though with a bold flair. Whatever was happening between them, whether it had already unfolded or was just beginning, was unmistakably clear. She'd gotten a heads up that her husband, Brandon Hayes, was pimping for some woman. And now, she knew who the woman was. Sophia Carter. She had met her a couple of times at events her husband had taken her to. The Carter woman was an interior decorator who had worked on some projects at their gyms and salons. She was skilled in her field. At first, she hadn't believed it. But after overhearing a conversation on the house phone, she decided to follow up on it. Now, standing here, she knew the truth. A mix of anger and amusement filled her. Her husband, who thought he was so clever, had just proven himself even more foolish than she had imagined. She watched as the two walked away together. It was clear, this was a situation unfolding, not one that had already played out. She wondered how the woman's husband would react to the scene. She had a good idea, unless he was the type to turn a blind eye. For now, she would keep the evidence stored safely on her phone. There would be a time to use it. Back to Daniel, the food at Antonio's Italian Bistro was as good as ever. After dinner, on a whim, I steered us toward Neon Lights Club, a 70s-style disco on the outskirts of town. She smiled as we pulled into the parking lot. "Going to be a fun night, I guess," said Sophia. "That's the idea," I said. Inside, we were able to find a table near the far wall, enough away from the blaring speakers to hear ourselves talk, as the occasion might arise. The DJ was on a break. He'd left on some intermission music for the patrons, and a few couples were boogieing around the floor. "Are we going to be good, Daniel? You and me?" she said. I stared at her and wondered what the question she'd asked would mean, if she knew what I in fact did know about her activities. I smiled. "Don't actually know yet. I'm still not happy about the way you've been treating me, Sophia. I guess we'll just have to wait and see." I had it in mind to offer her a last chance before the axe would fall. And if she did seize the opportunity to redeem herself, would I care? In any event, she had been hanging horns on me for so long that it was going to be more than difficult to get by it. At least for my part. "Daniel," she said. "Yes," I said. "This place has rooms." She rolled her eyes to indicate the upstairs floors, where the hotel rooms were located. I smiled. I felt like a relief pitcher coming in late innings to save the game. Well, she had expected to spend the evening on her back, hoping for some faceless dude to pleasure her and pay her. The good news? I'd be getting her for free. But even if I'd had to pay, the way she looked tonight would have made it more than worth it. I wondered how much she charged. "Let's get one," I said. "Let's," she echoed. As I signed for the room, one of the other counter attendants, there were 3, talked to her, appeared to know her. It was a tell. She had used the Neon Lights Club accommodations before. Clearly, she was not a cheap sex worker. Only the best for my personal 304. Then it hit me, the attendant thought I was a John. I left my gold cross pen on the counter. I wanted an excuse to come back. Just as we got to the elevator, I feigned a sudden thought. "Jesus," I said. I left my cross on the counter. "Be right back," I said, leaving her standing there, wondering what was going on. Back at the counter, the attendant who'd helped me was holding my gold cross pen. "Sorry," I said. "The pen belongs to Miss Rogers," said the clerk, cueing me to the name she used when working her evening job. "Miss Rogers," I said. God, I was good. Maybe Jonathan Fields should hire me part-time. The thought brought a smile to my face. "Why the big smile?" said Sophia. "The pen has sentimental value," I said. "Sentimental value?" she said. "Yeah. Cost me $200. "That's sentimental as hell," I said. She laughed. Upstairs the room was largish. Well, it was the Neon Lights Club. It had a reputation to uphold. She came to me, wrapping her arms around my neck, melding her body to mine. The kiss was long, and sweet, and gentle, and meaningful. She was sending me a message. "I love you, Daniel. Everything else that's happened notwithstanding," she said. I nodded. I wondered if in the end, I'd still be able to lower the boom on her and her pimp. "I'd like to be able to believe that," I said, dodging the inferred question and the response she no doubt expected. She stepped back slightly, searching my face. "I'll settle for that. For the moment," she said, a small smile tugging at her lips. I watched her, the woman who had been the love of my life for so long. She was stunning, so much so that I knew I would never truly erase her from my mind. But this moment wasn't about giving in to old habits. Not this time. She moved toward me again, pressing a lingering kiss to my lips. It was warm, familiar, but I kept it just that, a kiss. No matter what happened after tonight, I needed to make this moment about something more than just physical connection. She studied me for a long moment before reaching for the buttons of my shirt, moving slowly, deliberately. I gently caught her hands, stopping her. "Not tonight," I murmured. She looked up at me, searching my eyes. "Why?" "Because I need to think," I admitted. I need to understand where we're going. What this really means. A flicker of something. Hurt. Maybe disappointment. Crossed her face. But she didn't pull away. Instead, she exhaled softly and rested her head against my chest. I held her, pressing my lips to her hair, letting the silence settle around us. For a while, we just stood there, wrapped in each other's presence. It wasn't about passion or impulse tonight. It was about understanding, about figuring out if what we had was worth holding on to, or if it was already slipping away. After what felt like an eternity, she pulled back just enough to meet my gaze. "Was that enough for you?" she asked quietly. I sighed, brushing a hand down her back. "For now," I said, "but I need time." The next weeks were mellow. I was certain that she'd had no dates during that period. Did she want them? Had anything changed? The answers to those two questions? I had no idea. But then I did. It was a Wednesday afternoon and I'd been napping. The sun had been shining in on me for some little time before I realized it was cooking me alive. I got up and pulled the shade shut. Awake and thirsty, I headed downstairs to get something to drink. She was on the phone. "No, we can't go out tonight. It's Wednesday and I still have to baby little." "No. Not for a while yet." "No. No. 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 He's still too skittish." "Okay, so he's a chicken. He's also one hell of a breadwinner. You, on the other hand, are not. Listen, asshole, if you come around here causing me any grief, you'll regret it. That quite apart from never getting into my panties again. Got it? I don't know. Maybe in a few weeks. Hard to say right now. So he's a chicken. You're an asshole." "Yeah. Love you too." She hung up and headed for the downstairs bathroom. While that was revealing, I thought. Brandon? Some regular customer? I figured it was the latter. Brandon wouldn't have been calling, not while I was home. At least, I didn't think he would. Well, now I knew why she hadn't been working these past weeks. She was babying me. While I got over, as she saw it, my snit. She was probably under pressure to spread for some of her better customers. Or so I rationalized. The situation was actually amusing. It was beginning to look like we wouldn't make it. I had hoped. But no dice. Then it hit me, something my wife had mentioned in the heat of battle kept gnawing at me. I made a call. The result of the call? A certain Jonathan Fields came calling. "Hello, Jonathan," I said as he took the seat opposite me in my office. "Daniel," he said. I pushed the slip of paper over to him. "Can you find her?" I said. He picked up the note and read the name. "Rebecca Sullivan," he said. "Yes. Whatever you can find out. I've put a few particulars there, as you see, to maybe get you started. But the truth is I haven't seen or heard from her in years," I said. "Sure. I can find her," he said. "This her married name?" "No. That was her maiden name years ago. She'd likely be married for sure by now," I said. Meanwhile, Sophia and Brandon meet the Vasquez brothers. The four of them had commandeered a table near the back of the foodery. "So, Mr. Hayes, we have a deal, then?" said Miguel Vasquez. "You send me customers with money and you get 30%, he added. Brandon looked over at his number 134, Sophia. She nodded. "Miss Carter, I need to hear you say it," said Luis Vasquez. He was, after all, secretly recording everything that was said. One could never trust gringos. "Yes. I guess yes. We're good to go," she said, sealing her fate. "If she ever tried to double-cross them. We'd be obliged if you could send us our first prospects by the weekend," said Miguel. "We have a lot of product to move. And we'd like to move it in fewer but larger chunks to unload it." Brandon nodded. "We can do that. We have candidates already lined up. All our big-ticket users who have been picking it up mostly on street corners. They are anxious to simplify their purchasing and reduce their exposure." The two pushers exchanged glances and nodded. "Your clients can be completely confident in our security measures. It's in our best interest as well as theirs," said Luis. "That settles it then," Brandon replied. Sophia Carter smiled, but she couldn't shake a sense of unease. If Daniel found out, there'd be consequences. Brandon would be the first to go, but she wouldn't be far behind. Taking risks for extra profit was a far more dangerous game than what they had been doing before. She didn't feel right about any of it. But they were in too deep now. The Vasquez brothers were not the forgiving type. There was no turning back. No point in second-guessing. She needed to focus on the bright side. The large sums of money that would soon be rolling in. "Did you see the way that one, Luis, looked at me?" Sophia asked. "Ignore him. He fancies himself a charmer. That might work to our advantage at some point," Brandon replied. If you're thinking what I think you're thinking, you can blow it out your butt. I will never screw either one of those guys. Not while I'm alive, said Sophia. Brandon just smirked. For the first time in their relationship, she began to question the wisdom of even knowing the guy, let alone doing business with him. Jesus, what a mess. Back to Daniel, Jonathan Fields had gotten it. And it wasn't good. She had been abused by her crazy husband, Arnold Thornton, who had used her and beaten her on numerous occasions. But all such notwithstanding, she had covered for the a-hole when the police had finally come calling. Not for the abuse as it happened, but for possession of drugs to distribute. She had been spared the worst of the possible punishments for aiding and abetting the scumbag, but she had still been convicted and sentenced to 4 years for her involvement. That compared to the 10 to 25 years her former hubby was serving now. What to do? Caution to the winds. I made up my mind to see her. Well, if she would see me. I made the 100-mile drive. I watched as the guard ushered her and a dozen other inmates into the spacious hall. Steel tables with matching stools fixed to the floor dotted the place. A few children were in evidence accompanied by husbands, and in a couple of cases likely grandmothers. The object of my visit looked around trying to spot me. I had spotted her the moment she'd come through the door. She had been second in line. When it became clear that she was having trouble spotting me, I raised my hand and waved. She saw me, smiled, frowned, and gave me a tentative wave back. I motioned her to come to me. I had the table. She covered the 70 or 80 feet in the best part of half a minute. It was clear she was nervous. Her slow approach was evidence of that. I smiled encouragingly at her. She waved again. When she finally came within greeting distance, "Hi, Daniel," she said, breaking the ice. "Hello, beautiful." "Please," I said, indicating the seat across from me. "It's been a while," she said, ignoring my compliment. Which, by the way, she absolutely merited. "It has," I said. "Too damn long. Look, Rebecca, this place. Your situation. I get it. I was only able to find you because I put a PI on it. To say I was shocked and upset and concerned, well, you can imagine. The details you can tell me about later. Or never. But I really needed to see you. I hope you don't mind," I said. "Mind? No, of course not, Daniel. Obviously, this is more than humiliating for me. When the guard told me I had a visitor not on my list, you? Well, at first, I told them no way. I didn't want to see you. But then, I thought you already knew I was inside. So how much worse could it be?" she said. "So I told them to let you in. But aren't you married?" she said. "I remember you and Sophia." "It's complicated," I said. "She and I are on the outs. Sort of. She's been cheating on me forever. And now, I am about to have her served. Maybe. Probably. So anyway, you may ask, what does any of that have to do with you? Do you remember the last time I saw you? You might recall that I was holding on to something of yours. And we were about to have a moment. But it never happened because she interrupted us," I said. She nodded slowly. "Yes, I remember," she said. She giggled, a bit nervously. "Well, I learned my lesson that day. Don't cheat. That was the lesson. And I haven't. In all of the years since that day in my youth when you and I almost did. But when, not long ago, I caught her cheating, or thought I had, I confronted her. She threw up to me our almost indiscretion. And, well, that's what made me think of you. I've been thinking of you ever since. You look good, by the way. Pretty as always," I said. She looked down, her cheeks pinkening. "Thank you," she said. "You look good too, Daniel. I hear we can share lunch with you folks here," I said. "Yes," she said. "The food's not the best, but it's okay. Would you like to eat now?" "Yes," I said. She guided me over to a wide archway that led into the adjacent cafeteria area, which was almost as large as the room we had just left. We got into line and were served as a number of uniformed guards looked on. Over the next hour and a half, we got reacquainted. She learned about me, and I about her and her husband, Arnold Thornton. Well, as much as we could in the time allowed. The biggie? She had a son, Ronnie Thornton. Him, by her now imprisoned forever husband. As I was about to leave, she made a commitment to put me on her regular visitor list, along with her parents, her 2 brothers, and her lawyer, a certain Quinn Wilcox Jr. Back to Sophia in the days and weeks that followed my overhearing her on the phone. Sophia and I got along okay. She wasn't seeing anybody. Could she have somehow snuck in a liaison or 2 here and there? Maybe. But it would have been a challenge. Hence, I doubted it. Plus, what she told the guy on the phone that day seemed to be exactly what she had meant. She wasn't going to risk alienating me. At the end of the month following my visit to see Rebecca in the state pen, I got a visit myself. A surprise visit. From one Brandon Hayes. My wife's pimp. And sometime lover. Okay, Rachel, I'll see the man, I said. Well, I was mega curious. She ushered him in. The recorder was running. And I hoped to hell there was no snafu going to foul it up. Brandon Hayes was tall. Maybe 63. Slim. Sandy-haired. And arguably handsome. He took a seat in front of me without my saying it was okay and smiled. Yes, do have a seat, Mr. Hayes, I said, putting my stamp of approval on the already accomplished fact. What can I do for you? No wasting of words or time, huh, Mr. Carter? He said. I ignored his remarks. Again, what can I do for you, Mr. Hayes? I'm a busy man, I said. He let loose a sigh. I came here to apologize, Mr. Carter. Apologize? I said. Yes. About my behavior at Sophia's company party. I shouldn't have kept your wife so long. I hastened to add that what all we did was not but innocent, he said. I had to wonder what it might be that qualified as not but innocent in his view. Well, knowing what I knew, that is to say. All right? Anything else? I said. Only that I would like to invite you and your wife to my home for a party. It's this coming Saturday evening. It's my wife's birthday and we are having a number of friends and associates come by. And, well, it came to me that I might be able to make amends for my faux pas to some small degree if you'd be so kind as to let me, he said. I looked him straight in the eye. I was all but ready to flatly turn him down, when a thought came to me. I decided that I wanted to meet Monica Hayes, and a more perfect opportunity would be hard to imagine. The backyard of the Hayes home was spacious and well-shaded. A lucky circumstance, given the warm day. Thank you for coming, Mr. Carter, said Brandon. I nodded. He tendered my wife a small smile and a nod. We almost didn't come, but Sophia here thought it might be a good idea on some level. So here we are, I said. Yes, I had an ulterior motive, but laying the reason for our coming on my wife seemed a reasonable subterfuge. Well, again, thank you, he said. If it would be good for you, I'd like to introduce you around. His offer was more or less a question. That would be nice, said Sophia. I shrugged my agreeableness. We toured the yard and talked with a number of folks, none of whom I knew. But at the end of the tour, I'd met Mrs. Hayes. Monica Hayes. Pretty. 40-something. And personable. I wondered if she suspected her husband's proclivities. So, how are you doing, Mr. Carter, Mrs. Carter? Said Monica Hayes. She was smiling broadly and her eyes had a twinkle in them. We're fine. Doing well, I said. Nice party. Well, thank you, sir, she said. Daniel and Sophia, I said, indicating my wife, who hadn't been inclined to say much so far. Okay. Daniel and Sophia it is, she said. You can call me Monica. I bowed theatrically to acknowledge her permission. Sophia smiled and nodded. Just then Brandon, who had wandered off after steering us to his wife, returned and commandeered my wife. I smiled. My permission. I had to say, I was surprised to see Monica Hayes so at ease, given what I knew about her husband. Had she figured it out? Did she know what Brandon was up to? She had the calm confidence of a woman who knew something others didn't. I wanted to find out what that was. I have to say, I am surprised to see you here, she said. I was pretty sure that if your wife came, you wouldn't. I looked at her askance. Really? I said. Yes. Brandon let me know about the problem you had with him relating to her company's party, she said. So, he told her. But how much? The two of them, and especially my husband, were less than responsible in that regard. He has told me that he would like to make it right by you, she said. I smiled and nodded that I understood her. But I still wasn't sure how much she knew. We talked a little longer. Then she abandoned me to take care of something in the house. The dance of deception. As the night wore on, people loosened up and some dancing was added to the mix. I danced with my wife 3 times. And with our hostess once. So, how is she? Said Sophia. Who? I said. Monica. She's nice. And a good dancer, I said. Why? The reason for this party was partly Monica's birthday. But not the only reason, said my wife. Oh? I said. No. Brandon wanted to have you meet the group. And kind of see if you could see your way clear to become part of it, she said. Group? What group is that? A group that swings? I said, taking a flyer. My wife actually snorted. She laughed hard. Ding dong. You get the prize. Yes, she said. And your inclination in that regard would be? I asked. I'd have to think about it, I said. I did not want her to be cued in as to my real feelings for her favorite pimp or his group. Hence, the verbal subterfuge. The turning point the party was winding down when she came up to me. "So, Daniel, I hope you had a good time," said Monica Hayes. "It was very nice," I said. "You know, I'm a pretty good judge of character. And of people's intentions, Daniel. I've noticed you taking stock tonight, if that's the way to phrase it. You know what's going on, don't you?" she said. Suddenly, I was trapped. I was very much aware that this woman had me down pat. Trying to lie to her could backfire big time. "Meaning?" I asked. "That my husband runs a call girl service. And that your wife is one of his girls," she said. She said it so matter-of-factly that I had to believe she had another agenda rather than to merely inform or question me. I stared at her, but remained silent. I honestly had no idea how to handle this woman. "Don't fret, Daniel. He doesn't know that I know that," she said. "I think that you and I need to compare notes at some point. And that rather sooner than later," she said. I felt that I had to gamble. "Okay," I said. "When and where?" "So you do know then," she said. I nodded. "Charlie's Diner. Lunchtime. Tuesday," she said. "Okay," I said. Well, at least I could tell Jonathan that Hayes' wife didn't know what was going on. But that lover boy didn't know she knew. Interesting. I'd have Jonathan stay on Brandon and his little operation a deal longer. Who knew? I might get real lucky. And regardless, the info would help me in any decisions I'd have to be making down the line. The moment of reckoning, it was 16 months into Sophia's sentence, and 19 months into Rebecca's. And they, along with 116 others, got the good news. Unconditional release. I got the call at 10 in the morning. I was actually with a client. I finished up with him and was on the road, without even so much as going home to change out of my suit. I was waiting outside the gate when they exited. Yes, Rebecca and Sophia were released at the same time. They saw me and came to me. I was leaning back against the car door with a smile on my face, as broad as all outdoors. "Okay, if we give Sophia a ride, Daniel?" said Rebecca. "Of course. A no-brainer," I said. We were 10 miles down the road when Rebecca, laid it on me. "Daniel," she said. "What?" I said. Her tone of voice concerned me. "A little. Sophia's going to need some help, too, for the short haul. Do you think she could stay with us for a while?" said Rebecca. I relaxed. "Sure. No problem. Sophia, you're welcome at our place anytime. But your former business?" "Daniel, I will only be handling household interiors from now on." "Well, if I can get my job back," she said. She had lost it, of course, when she went inside. But I had an idea about that. I knew some people that I did taxes for that could be persuaded to hire a very beautiful sales agent, one who knew the ropes of interior decorating. And the two guys I was thinking of? They did industrial stuff, not just the home and garden thing. That was a win-win. The final outcome, Rebecca and I were married. Not a month after her getting out. Ronnie was adopted by me. We settled into a lifestyle that most folks would envy. And the sex? Primo. Sophia stayed with us for some 3 months. I was able to engineer a job for her that paid her 3 times what she had made at Evergreen Home Interiors. A year later, she fell in love with one of the guys who'd hired her. She would be all right, and that was all that mattered. Thanks for watching. Did Daniel make the right choice? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more.